Is it something about playing on the road? Is it something about the physicality of Montreal? What happened? What happened to this game? Sceptres lose 3-1 in the hands of the Montreal Victoire in Montreal in what was a bad game. I don't know how else to put it. It was a bad game. They looked from like minute 1, they looked tired. That's, I think, how I would phrase it best. The team looked tired in their play. It was just a little bit slower, a little bit messier. It was not a well put together game from them. Maybe it's because they played, 3 games in 8 days or something like that. It wasn't enough. Like, they were the second best team on the ice the whole night. Montreal just ran their show from minute 1. They had no chance. They didn't give themselves a chance. They had no opportunity at all. Kirk was doing, as well as she could. I think she played pretty well. She got the second star of the game. But, like, what the hell happened? In the first, they were outshot something like 10-3, and it was just like Montreal had all the control, and it didn't take long. 8.5 minutes into the period, Katie Tabin with a seeing eye shot just gets through a few bodies in front over the glove of Kirk, and it is 1-0 less than 10 minutes into the first. Like, that's not how you want to be starting a game. But at the same time, like, it was a great shot from Tabin, no tip or nothing. Kirk couldn't see it but it's just the relentless pressure Montreal was able to have from right at the beginning of the game. And, Toronto, not 20 seconds later or so, gets a power play. And this is great news until you remember that the Sceptres power play sucks. It's terrible. It's like comically bad. They have something like 1 goal on 12 chances or something. It's laughable. And that goes exactly how you'd expect. I don't think they got a shot on their first power play, or maybe they got one, but it just they weren't able to get anything going from it. They weren't able to use it to turn the tide of the game. They weren't able to use it to gain some momentum and some pressure. They weren't really able to use it to take any pressure away from Montreal. Like, it was just Toronto's power play is just awful, and I hope that's like priority number 1 that they're working on in practice, is figuring that out, because when you're getting as many chances as they are, they can't just be throwing them away like this. Later in the period, Montreal seems to have scored a second goal, and from looking at it initially, it's like, oh geez, Montreal scored again. A really nice connection from Poulin winning the face-off to Stacey passing it back over to Poulin in front, and she puts it in the back of the net. Sure, great, it looked good upon review, because if I'm not mistaken, the PWHL reviews, I don't know if it's necessarily every goal, but any goal that there might be some question on, they take a look at it. And this one was ruled a no goal for being a kicking motion from Poulin to put in the back of the net. And a lot of Montreal fans probably aren't thrilled about that. I will say, I think if Poulin kept her skate on the ice, it would have been fine. It's because it got elevated. She lifted up her heel when she kind of angled her skate towards the net, and I think that's where they were able to draw the line of it being a kick instead of just a positioning of her skate. Toronto gets a break there. They could have gone into the second period down 2-0. They wind up only down 1-0. That is a climbable hill that they can get past. And they go into the second period, and you think, yeah, they're only down by 1. They should be able to swing this. What's the other thing we know about Toronto is their second period has been their worst period all season so far. They've only played 3 games, sure, but the second period has been their worst one in every single game. And today was no different, because Toronto couldn't get anything going in the second, much like the first. But then, right around the same timestamp into the period, about 8.5 minutes in, Haley Skamura was able to get another goal in. And this is one, it was, I don't want to call it fluky necessarily, but this is one where, Montreal, I believe it was Skylar Irving, got the assist, digs it out of the corner, throws it out front of the net. It hits off a body that I believe was Skamura's. It just kind of bounces through Kirk. Like, it was a weird one because it kind of bounced down. If I'm not mistaken, it was not along the ice initially, but it's a good play by Montreal. And now, all of a sudden, they've doubled their lead. Toronto's down 2-0. It's another one of these. Right? And I maintained the game. They looked tired. They just didn't look ready, or it didn't look like they were putting 100% of their effort into the game. Worth noting, though, in the second period, which may be a bit of a reason why it was a bit more lackluster, they started the period pretty early on, having to kill off a 5-on-3. Which isn't something you see often. We saw it twice this game. But a pretty long 5-on-3 between a tripping and an interference call. And the second one coming on Ella Shelton. And this is one where, I don't know, sometimes you think it maybe shouldn't be a penalty if it's objectively funny. Because as they're defending the first power play, Shelton is in front of the net, and the Montreal player is standing with her kind of stick elevated at her hips, and Shelton just sort of pops it out of her hands. I think it was Stacy, actually. Just kind of pops it out of her hands, and then they call that interference. And, yeah, you can't just remove a stick from a player's grip. Obviously, you can't do that. But it was, I don't know, I thought it was funny. But that's also not a penalty you want to take, right? And, Shelton's been great for the Sceptres so far. That's not a penalty you want to take. As bad as Toronto's power play has been, their penalty kill has been great. I think I heard the announcer say at Toronto going into this game hadn't allowed a goal while they were on the penalty kill. In contrast to how terrible their power play's been, no goals on the penalty kill either. That's not bad at all, right? So they're able to kill off the 5-on-3 before, letting in the even strength goal later in the period. But that's where the second period would end. Toronto down 2-0, going into the third. And the third is where they really had their opportunities. The third is where it seemed like, even though they still didn't look all that good, they, turned it up a little bit. And unfortunately not enough, but they turned it up a little bit. And then a minute and a half or so into the third period, Emma Gentry rips one, a really nice goal, past Desbiens to make it a 2-1 game. And all of a sudden, they are right back in it. They're one goal behind, and they have a bit of momentum from getting a goal. This is doable. This is looking manageable. And you'll love to see the rookie score. Hopefully someone getting their first goal of the season brings a bit more life into the team. It was a really good goal. It was a quick little shoulder fake, if you will, and there was a flyby screen, and it looked good. And a little later into the period, Harman would take a holding penalty. Again, from going off what the announcer said, for the first time the season, they let in a power play goal from, who else but Laura Stacey, assisted by who else but Marie-Philippe Poulin. It was a good play from Montreal, and again, a Toronto team that looked tired all night. Montreal was finally able to capitalize, and now it's that 2-goal lead again, 3-1 for Montreal. And then a couple of minutes later, Toronto is given a golden opportunity. They're on the power play. Then Montreal clears it over the glass for a delay of game. Boom, 5-on-3. Then Laura Stacey takes a roughing penalty because she chokes one of the Sceptres from behind. I believe it was Monroe. So, yeah. Extended 5-on-3 for Toronto. It's looking really good. You have this great opportunity. You killed off one of these earlier in the game. Now you have the opportunity to, make Montreal eat it for their mistakes. But what do we remember about Toronto's power plays? They suck! Toronto can't score on the power play. They have one goal in the season from Watts. It was, and no, don't get me wrong. They had good pressure. They had some good chances. They had some good shots. They had Desbiens moving, and credit to Desbiens. I mean, she's the starter for Team Canada for a reason, because she was looking, she was shutting everything down on that penalty kill for Montreal. But Toronto just was not able to capitalize on this chance, and Montreal kills it off. Toronto had a bit more pressure later when they pulled their goalie for the 6-on-5. It was looking good, but ultimately that's, a day late and a dollar short from the Sceptres. They decided to, turn it on and be a bit more desperate once they had to be. In the last half of the third period when they're down by 2, it's like, guys, you can't. That's not enough. You can't be only playing a sixth of the game that way and hoping that it's gonna, work itself out for you. That's not how it goes. They didn't show up to this one. I don't know what it was. It was the same when they played Minnesota in the first game on the road. It was just sloppy and messy. Emma Molte, we all love Emma Molte. She was doing a little too much. I think there were a few times where she tried to deke and dangle past someone where she just didn't need to and wound up losing her the puck, and it wound up being a turnover for Montreal to get possession. Doesn't need to happen. Hjalmarsson looked pretty good this game. She had a couple of shots. Her shots aren't the hardest, I'm noticing, but she didn't look too bad. Watts had a couple of really good chances. It was good to see DeGeorge and Dalton going back against their former team. They seem to do pretty alright. I worry about Toronto's physicality, or lack thereof. Montreal is a really physical team. It's a bit stealthy because one of their most physical players is Poulin, and you normally think of Poulin for, she can really, she has a lot of scoring power and passing power and is great at the face-off dot and everything. She'll flatten people. She'll really lay some people out. I think I believe it was in the first period, there was a point in time where Poulin did kind of take Molte's head off. I don't think she really meant to. I don't think that was she was doing with malicious intent. But Molte had gotten hit. She was coming off the boards. She was bent over, and then Poulin just does a flyby, and Molte was laying on the ice. There was another point in time, a few minutes before that, where I believe it was Abby Rock kind of cross-checked Turnbull's side, kind of right where your liver is, kind of. And I'm pretty sure there's a gap in the equipment there, right? So that is most likely not protected by anything, and Turnbull went down in the defensive zone, so both players wound up staying in the game. But, Toronto doesn't really have those, imposing physical presences. You have Fast, who led the league in hits, but she also, Defender of the Year, led the league in ice time. You're asking Fast to do a lot. She's an offensive defender, your top line unit, and I love Renata Fast. She's great. She can't do everything on the blue line, right? They had a couple of players last season. Ryland McKinnon comes to mind. Ryland McKinnon was a beast. She would run people over left, right, and center. She was also scratched for half the games, and this season she signed in Boston, where I think she'll do really well because that's how Boston plays. It's where maybe Troy Ryan doesn't necessarily want to coach or enable a more physically dominant team. Maybe the GM doesn't want to build a team that, has these more lumbering players. Maybe they want their strength to be their playmaking and their finesse. and everything. And I have to tell you, I'm sorry to be the one to report this, Gina Kingsbury. Your playmaking isn't working because the passes aren't clean, right? They need to be crisp. It's like you want to assemble a team that can make passes like nice crispy bacon that you can snap and it makes a nice little noise and you bite into it and it crunches and it's great. And currently it's like uncooked slabs of bacon meat just flopping around. It's of no use to anybody. Toronto's passing has been a weak point, in all of their games so far this season. They were able to tighten it up a little bit against Ottawa. It wasn't looking too bad against Boston, but if that's where you want to focus on and that's not going well, if you want to focus on high goal scoring and sort of finesse forward players, well, we're not scoring a whole lot either, and you don't have any big bodies to punish the people who are going after your players. You're sort of just laying down, right? That's the thing. If you have Rock, if you have Poulin, if you have whomever else going after your team, especially like a fan favorite like Malte, who's pretty good at, playmaking. She's a second line center. If you have, going after Turnbull, your captain, you need people to come out the next shift and say, all right, you're getting lined up. You need to make sure that they know you are not to be messed with, that these players are not to be messed with, that your team is not to be messed with. And if you don't have that, they're just going to keep doing it. And what are you going to do? It's a missing piece in Toronto's roster, and I don't think it's going to be necessarily a factor every game. But there's definitely going to be some, like this one against Montreal, where it matters a lot and it becomes very noticeable. They need those players that are more rough and tumble. Their next home game isn't for a little while, I don't think, because their technically next home game is in Halifax. And then, of course, we have the rivalry series break, and then there's the Olympic break later. If it's something about being on the road, if it's something, I don't know, unfavorable matchups, if it's something about discomfort of other arenas, which, they're supposed to do, but Toronto deserved to lose this game. They didn't show up. And that's kind of all there is to it. And hopefully they can figure that out by the time they play their next one. That's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe if you want to see more. All that jazz. Figure it out.